presentation today is a very special one, as we are all aware. So before we proceed, we'd like to call on Dr. Abdul Mumini Isa. Dr. Abdul Mumini Isa, can you kindly just unmute yourself and then lead us in prayers before we begin? Abdul Mumini. Okay. What about Abdul Fatai?
No,
yes.
Let him unmute himself. Yes. Let him unmute himself. Yes.
Abdul Mumun.
Yes.
Okay.
You can.
I've been allowed now.
Okay.
Okay. Let us pray. We thank you, God, for bringing us to yet another edition of the weekly meeting of the Clinical Pharmacists Association of Nigeria. This is a special one, and we have an honorable guest in our midst. We pray that our deliberations today be to the glory of God and for the betterment of clinical pharmacy practice in Nigeria, as well as pharmacy. In God's mighty name, I pray.
Amen. Amen. So, good evening once again, and we're all welcome to this session. This is a special session, as you're all aware, that our own Dr. Dan Oruwase is going to.
Sorry, Dr. Rajuma, can you unmute yourself, please? Unmute yourself, please. Dr. Rajuma, yes. Dr. Rajuma, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Am I okay now?
Yes, you're okay now.
It's okay. So before we proceed, we would like to acknowledge the presence of some of our leaders in the profession, leaders of clinical pharmacy in Nigeria. We'd like to first of all welcome our own Dr. Dan Oruwase, the presenter of tonight's edition of clinical pharmacy presentation. We'd like to welcome Dr. all the academia. I cannot identify some of us. Dr. Bola Olayiwola, Dr. Kingsley Amebo is in our midst tonight. Dr. Solomon, our own chairman, newly crowned chairman of the Education Committee. You're welcome this evening. We want to also acknowledge the presence of Dr. Henry Osai, Dr. Andrew Momo, Dr. Trimi Priye. I can't just ignore your name like that. So you're all welcome. Lastly, Dr. Ibrahim Bello, you've been of immense, you've been contributing so well to the growth of this association. We thank you. I scrolled through to see whether I can see our CPAN chairman. It's like he's here to, Dr. Maureen Wafo, you're welcome. Welcome all. Our secretary, I don't know whether she's on board, Dr. Motia, you're welcome. Dr. Comfort Sariem, our own lecturer from UniJOS, you're welcome. So The long-awaited day is here, and to want to showcase one of our own, one of the aspirants to the office of the PSN president is going to do us a favor this night to present to us on the topic interprofessional rivalry and disharmony in Nigerian health sector, a way forward for Nigerian pharmacists. Dr. Dan is someone that is known all over. We can agree with me that Dr. Dan possesses his own credentials I cannot even count. He started his internship in University of Lagos Teaching Hospital. Internship in Lagos State HMB, 1986 to 1987. NYC in Lut, 1987 to 1988. Pharmacist 1 in Lut, 1989 to 1992. Project manager, defunct PTF. In fact, when I saw this one, I remember the good old days when PTF brought on board so many innovations. I never knew that he worked with that project with our own, one of our fallen heroes, Professor Dora Aquili, then of blessed memory. He was then appointed as Chief Pharmacist, FMC Yenagua in 2001. He rose through the ranks to the Director of Pharmacy in that same institution. As the Director of Pharmacy, he doubles at the HOD Pharmacy, FMC Unigua. He was a member of Top Management Committee, FMC Unigua, a member of Tenders Board, member Senior Staff Committee, Chairman Hospital Price Drugs and Therapeutic Committee, member Essential Medicine List formulary in 2017. He was given an award as being the best HOD, FMC Unigua, in 2018. He is also an adjunct lecturer in Niger Delta University. He has been a supervisor to preceptors to so many West African postgraduate college of pharmacy students. A pioneer, chairman PSN Bayelsa State, 2003 to 2010. He was a national publicity secretary, PSN, 2009 to 2012. He was, I think, a chairman of a committee of health of pharmacy of federal health institutions since 2001. I understand that he just handed over. A member of CPC for so many years for our own PSN conferences. He is a facilitator in FMC Unigua, South Zonal Narcotics Site, member editorial board, FarmWise magazine, author and co-author, many publications of many publications, chairman Ahapun Scientific Journal, PSN Bayelsa State Most Active Pharmacist Award 2012, and is a recipient of Distinguished Service Award of IAPIN 2012. He's also served in many committees, member UNOC and FMO, that is Federal Ministry of Health, Technical Working Group on Control Medicines, a member Bayelsa State on Essential Medicine List, representative board and council of APBN. Some of these acronyms I'm not familiar with them. Former Deputy President, South PSN, happily married to a beautiful wife, Helen Ehi Oruwase, and blessed with powerful children, love sports and adventure, and a traditional title holder. It is on this note that I would like to welcome our own Dr. Dan Oruwase, Dr. Dan for short, to lead us in this session this evening on the topic interprofessional rivalry and disharmony in Nigeria's health sector, a way forward for Nigerian pharmacists. So I crave your indulgence to join hands together to welcome on board our presenter for tonight. In fact, this topic was carefully chosen because he is currently the chairman, PSN Committee on Inter and Intra-Professional Relations. So I think he's the right person to take us through this session this evening. Dr. Dan, you are welcome on board. Thank you. And good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, my colleagues who are listening. I also want to thank the chairman for inviting me to this biggest presentation. I hope and pray that I will not disappoint you. That I will do my best. And I hope Dr. Biarim will share the slide from Ilorin. So, thank you, Mr. Moderator. You have already introduced me. I'm ready to say too much. I said that I should just go straight to the business. Well, the presentation will take following format. Try to do an overview of what you see as overview that service outline of presentation, which includes introductions, definitions, a brief history of pharmacy and medical professions in Nigeria, professions and ethics, professionals, regulations, conflicts and conflict resolution, healthcare team and teamwork, rivalry among professionals in Nigeria, disharmony and consequences, and then the way forward. The next slide just shows us a brief of what we're like to We're going to talk about.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, Dr. Dan. We would like to hear from Dr. Bello whether he can actually project the slides on the screen so that we can follow.
And again, there's echo from Dr. Dan's audio. So you need to look at that too.
How do I correct the echo?
You have to stop one of your device. You have to remove the audio from one of your devices.
Okay.
Maybe you block it with an earpiece.
Okay. Should I remove the PC?
Yes, at least. You have to stop one there.
Let me stop the PC then.
Okay.
Let me take off the PC. And
okay.
I hope the echo is off now.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to follow through with the presentations. I'll be sharing my experiences as we get along. So, by way of introduction, I just like to say that the world was made by God Himself, but that the activities of man led to what we now call conflict. Because God made man and gave man dominion over all things. And what we see today, did not start today. It's always been with man. But let's cut that story short. Let's go on to the next one to say that in the healthcare team, we're supposed to have like a teamwork. And that rules exist, regulations, and so on and so forth. These are supposed to guide good behavior in such a manner that healthcare delivery not only be multidisciplinary, can be delivered in such a manner that the outcome will be beneficial to the recipient, as well as even the giver. The giver must have job satisfaction at the end of the day. However, we need to understand that there was a time pre-1990, we had something that we call some level of harmony in the health sector. But with the coming of COVID-19, things took a new turn in the health sector. The harmony that existed started for the very first time. However, let's take a look at the history of pharmacy and medicine. Both Both professions had existed side by side until the 19th century, until the first third of the 19th century, when it became important that have a separation of family from medicine. And of course, even in modern day, it is supported by the national drug policy of 2000. In the appropriate section, it says that where there's a prescribing doctor, there must be a dispensing pharmacist, especially in secondary and tertiary facilities. It's clearly stated there. And what we have been having is a situation where conflicts continue to arise here and there, but we're going to have to manage those conflicts. So, in 1240, pharmacy was officially removed from the practice of medicine, and that began in Europe. In Nigeria, the birth of pharmacy started with pharmacy school in 1927 at Yaba, and that was located in Zaria. And of course, the very first pharmacy that was that we had in Nigeria was sometime between 1829 and 1911 by one Mr. Richard Zacchaeus Bailey. He had a pharmacy that was located on Balogun Street in Lagos. Now, if you look at the history of medicine, particularly in Nigeria too, the medical people came along as explorers. When you hear names like Mungo Park and so on and so forth, those are the first doctors that came into Nigeria. And of course, the first facilities that were set up for healthcare delivery were actually by the missionaries, particularly the Catholic Church. And so over the years, both professions have developed and we have been rendering services, albeit growing from the very, very rudimentary beginning up to the stage where we are today. And so, as we get along, we'll see that some of the highlights of the medical history will be that it was not until 1960 that the medical profession in Nigeria actually took roots by way of enactment in the by the Federal House of Assembly through an act. And it was in this same time that you had the first director of medical services, who was the chairman of the board then that metamorphosed into what is now known as the Medical and Dental Practitioners Act, which is now known as the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. So it's not until 1963 that all of this took place. But for the pharmacies, it has been there since 1927. That means both professions are regulated professions. It therefore means that there must be law and order, and there is a very high degree of separation of operations. The separation of, we have what you call professional limitations, professional boundaries, and so on and so forth. Now let's define what a profession is. A profession can be defined as a paid occupation, especially one that involves prolonged training, formal education, and similarities would include things like career, occupation, calling, or vocation. And you can also want to look at the profession as an act of declaring that one has a particular feeling or quality, especially when it is not, when this is not the case. Of course, you also have professional sportsmen. Of course, they also have specialized training, whatever way you want to look at it, the athletes, the footballers, the boxers, and so on and so forth. And they are earning a living from that practice. So you can look at professions from these two angles. And what are the characteristics? One, it gives you need to have great responsibility. You must be accountable. In professions are based on specialized theoretical knowledge, which all of us have, institutional preparations, autonomy, and of course, professions are focused on clients rather than customers. And there's a direct working relationship, and you have ethical constraints. The ethical constraints are the things that have brought us here today, where people trespass the ethics and then encroach in another man's profession. These are some of the reasons why there's conflict and why there's disharmony. So as we get along, we shall see more. There are a little areas of overlaps, which definitely we're going to see. And what I've said above applies to all professions, whether in the clergy, law, business, engineering, whichever which way. But it's important to know that professions must work together by cooperation and collaboration. And there must be division of labor. And sometimes you also need to have safeguards. This division of labor is for us to be able to have safeguards. Just like I mentioned that the National Drug Policy of 2005 did say that where there is a prescribing doctor, there must be a dispensing pharmacist. And it's also important to know that professions evolve, they develop and they grow. Therefore means that what was in 1940s may not be so, and may not be so true in 2021, because you will have had new knowledge, new frontiers, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, professions have specialties and they have subspecialties. So, who is a professional? Anyone who belongs to any of these professions is a professional. Whether you are a sportsman or you are a trained fellow in the university and you become a professional, whether you are a pharmacist or not. You could be a white-collar professional, you could be an executive professional, you could be a non-manual professional. And who is this? A profession, a person who is engaged or is qualified in the profession, like a pharmacist, is called a professional. So we are professionals. Whether we are doctors, nurses, and so on and so forth, we are professionals, and we are guided by ethics. And what is the professional ethics? These are principles that govern the behavior of a person or group of persons in a business, in a practice environment. That means you can't just do anything anyhow according to your whims and purposes. You are bound by laws. And we in pharmacy know that our profession is a very well-regulated one, the same way that medicine is also regulated, because that is where plenty of the conflicts are coming from as far as healthcare delivery is concerned. Now, these ethics are usually based on consensus amongst practitioners, which is sanctioned by law. For example, our pharmacist code of ethics there, the medical and dental council ethics, they are also there. So it therefore means that we all know ab initio where our boundaries lie. So when you go beyond that, you now begin to have conflicts. And the conflicts can be intra as well as inter. Well, these are just basically to educate us on what profession and professionalism or professional ethics. They are usually what you may want to call them moral codes of conduct. But let's compare them to the Rotary Club of the Rotary Club 4-way test, which says, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So when we look at all of this, we want to see whether these conflicts, which has led to rivalry, as we get along, we'll see that it's not been based on the truth. It has not been fair to all concerned, and it has not built any goodwill. Neither has it built any friendship, and it has not been beneficial to all concerned, at least to the same level. Even though there are some benefits that may have come out of it, but we believe that this conflict and this rivalry has not been of any good to us. And so, what are the provisions of these codes? Honesty, trustworthiness, transparency, accountability, confidentiality, and so on and so forth. And why do we need ethics? Like I said before, it's to guide us in the way we behave. We must be respectful to one another. Our behavior must be socially acceptable, professionally compliant, and that, of course, at the end of the day, it should protect society from unscrupulous professionals. We have too many of them in Nigeria, and this is where code of ethics comes. And it serves as a basis for seeking redress when there's an injury to the client. Without this code of ethics, the client may not know when he's been injured and therefore may not be able to seek redress. So we move on. Well, this one just guides us as to this diagram just further illustrating what professional ethics and character will look like. It's purely moral issues. Thank you. Can we go on to the next one? Roles of professional bodies. Now, there are two different things we must know. There's a difference between the professional body and the professional regulation. a regulatory body. In this aspect of professional bodies, we are looking at the professional bodies like PSN, NMA, and so on and so forth. And what do? They provide network for the professionals to meet and discuss issues of collective interest and collective bargaining and all of that. They promote high standards and advocate for needs of professionals and clients. They relate and interface with other professional groups. Of course, we have inter and intraprofessional conflicts resolutions and so on and so forth. Issue of code of conduct to guide professional behavior. Issue of rights of professionals, clients, and the public. We deal with the complaints against professionals, and of course, we have discipline of professionals. The professional bodies, any professional body that cannot have all of this is not worthy to be called a professional body. Now, for the PCN, who is a regulator, just like the MDCN, it must have a power. It is a creation of law, unlike our professional body, which is not a creation of law. This is a creation of law. That's the PCN Act. It's a creation of law, and it exists to control and regulate pharmacy in all its aspects and ramifications according to our PCN Act. And it has the power to exist, but if it does not have power to exist, it cannot function. And it has the power to set standards as set out in the PCN Act. It has the power to grant benefits. For example, for you to be a pharmacist, it is the PCN Act that prescribes what you must do to become a pharmacist. And it has the right to sanction professionals as well as members of the public who go against the rules there. It has the power to make rules, monitor them, implement them for compliance. It has the power to provide administrative services or documentation, because without the documentation, we may not know who a pharmacist is. That's why we have a register. Just like every other profession have registers. We have the power to appropriate and appropriately inform the public and educate them. We have the power to liaise between the profession and the government, whether legislative, executive, or even the judicial arms and other relevant agencies. We have the PCN has the power and functions to protect and discipline members, as well as protection of the public. That is a very, very important thing, because they set the rules, they set the standards, and then they give us the code of conduct, which we must conform to. Now, then of course, we have conflicts. And what is a conflict? Conflict is simply a struggle between two people, struggling for either ideas, resources, usually money. It can be a fight, it can be a battle, there can be controversy, there can be war of words like we have in the media this time. We have, if you look at our various pharmacy platforms, it's all about what the NMA is doing and what the LMA is not doing, what pharmacy is doing, what one arm of pharmacy is doing against the other one that is not. These are all conflicts. But what's important, that conflicts are not meant to tear us apart, but once we're able to resolve them and reconcile, it's supposed to build us and bring us together. So there are main 5 classes of conflict that would include information, values, interests, relationships, and structural. But what is of interest in this topic for today is mainly that of interest. It is the interest of the pharmacists that we're looking at. The doctors are looking at their own interest. Other members of the healthcare team are also looking at out of their interest. Now, this interest can be perceived and it can be actual, especially when it comes to issues of money and welfare. And that is where lies our problem so far. Like I mentioned much earlier, that between 1985 and 1992, a lot happened in the healthcare team, in the healthcare sector, when Professor Oliko Irason became the Minister of Health. Single-handedly removed the medical persons from the entire structure and gave a new salary structure. Under the guise that he was removing health practitioners away from the structure and gave, but there was a differential. And that was the very beginning of this disharmony. And the medical profession since then has never looked back. Rather than bridging the gap, what has happened is that the gap has become wider by the day. Even at the level at which we're still talking about, even health hazard allowance with government, they are still thinking of how to increase the gap the more, and they want us to cooperate with them, and we have disagreed. So we must look back at this. This is the real source of the disharmony in the health sector. Now, there can be group sources of conflicts as well as individual sources. We're going to look at each of them. Now, areas of professional overlap. These are group sources. When a group of people begin to think that they can do things, and then of course they are backed by the group, then of course you have obsolete legislations, new legislations. These are all sources of There are sources of conflicts. For example, our CAP 535. Yes, it's not entirely bad, but we know that we can no longer be sanctioning people 20 naira, 30 naira now, 2,000 naira. We must be sanctioning people in the region of 500,000, 2 million, and so on and so forth to make sense so that people, it can really serve as a deterrent. Now, there are new regulations. If you look at the old one, you talk about pharmaceutical inspectors, where medical doctors are involved, but the new regulation does not make room for such things. So these are all areas of what's it called, areas of conflict, involving new areas of professional competencies. When we started school, it was more of product. By the time we were finished, we started talking about clinical. This clinical practice now, the doctors are viewing it as if we are encroaching on their practice, and that is not correct. Meanwhile, our own laws also grant that the doctor may have access to some medicines for the immediate use of his patients. Meanwhile, they have now construed that to mean that they can have a whole pharmacy in their facilities without the presence of a pharmacy. You see, these are areas of conflict arising from developments and so on and so forth. Now, for the individual sources, this is the most important aspect, because individuals make these groups. They exert pressures and begin to converse some new positions, new ideas, whether they are good or they are bad, to their colleagues who begin to drive these ideas. Just like I said, a doctor owns a clinic. He does not want to employ a pharmacist. You now think of how to legitimize it, just like as you had in the PCN Act that went to the National Assembly recently. Whereas, and it says, where there is no pharmacist, a doctor or a nurse, nothing precluding should not allow a doctor or a nurse to provide dispensing services. And they want pharmacists to support that. No. And pharmacists have also said in that same act that it should be written in clear terms that where there is no doctor, the pharmacist should be able to consult, to diagnose, and to carry out treatment, which they have not agreed upon, and they will not agree. So these are all sources. Again, the bottom line is that it is individuals who have come with these ideas who want to legitimize their illegitimacies through the use of group resources. Now, you also have personal drives. Personal drives is happening everywhere, even within pharmacy. It's always there. For example, all of us in the hospital, we want to own shops. ACPM members are saying, no, you already have a job, stay where you are, and so on and so forth. So these are all areas of conflicts, but we need to address all of them. Of course, you also have ambitious and manipulative individuals. All that they do is to manipulate other people and to do their bidding. And at the end of the day, to look like the professional or the entire profession that is into that practice. Meanwhile, it is not so. And then, of course, you have professional territorial equipment, like I said. The National Drug Policy has clearly defined who should prescribe and who should dispense. Now, what we now have is that we have both prescribers and dispensers all rolled in one. Then you have the issue of quackery. Quackery is promoted by so many other groups of people. Now, rivalry is a competition based for, everybody wants attention. You want a lasting competitive, engage in lasting competitive relationship, which is not good. And that is where we have reached now, because we knew what we were in 1986. We know what we are now. We have seen that the gap between us and our so-called rivals have widened rather than closing up. So that rivalry is there. It's not only between doctors and pharmacists, it's between doctors, pharmacists, nurses. In fact, that is the basis of the birth of Johesu and Appa. You will find that most of the time, Johesu is on one side, enemy is on the other side. And therefore, this rivalry has now come to a situation where there is victimization and there's flagrant sabotage of the entire health system. Just like the current NARD strike, it's a sabotage of the entire healthcare system. Very ill-timed. To go on strike so that they now distract government from what will benefit everybody, which was the issue of 65 years elongation as well as the hazard allowance. They have succeeded in pushing all of those things by at least 8 weeks. But I think that government is thinking of what to do with that, and then we are going to move on from there. So please, can we go on to the next level? So rivalry will lead to disharmony, and disharmony simply means that everything is out of tune. Version has said that there are what you call the causes of industrial disharmony. It can be structural, it could be management policies, it can be intra-organizational policies. It can also be interpersonal and personal sources and procedural sources. These are all things that can lead to industrial disharmony. In 2000 and can't remember the year now, but there was this Yayale Ahmed committee that sat. I think that committee came to a head, and the report was rejected on both sides for one reason or the other. And you will not believe that some members who were supposed to be representing other groups did not actually sign that report. And yet some persons wanted some areas of the report to be agreed upon, while the other one that does not favor them will not agree. So disharmony will continue where there is discord. Disharmony will continue where there is disharmony. Disharmony will continue where there is conflict. Disharmony will continue where there is lack of trust and mutual understanding, as well as mutual respect for one another. That is the cause of disharmony. And like I said, all this started in earnest between 1986 and 1992. Can we go on, please? So I think let's go. I think I'll go on. I can leave that. Go on to the next slide. Now, in 2010, in an attempt by the then president, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, to stem the tide of industrial action by health workers, doctors, dohesu, and so on and so forth, set up a committee, a 42-man committee, in which pharmacists were also represented. It was headed by Justice Bello Ahmed Kuso. Now, prior to that time, in 2009, there was a job evaluation exercise that was carried out by the federal government. And key among the recommendations that doctors were rated 10, pharmacists 8.8, and others were rated from 7.9 and below. This was what led to the creation of coheres and commerce. But there were certain things that, again, were common. For example, the issue of hazard allowance. We all work in the same environment, and the government of the day felt that because we work in the same environment, everybody should go home with the same hazard allowance. And that was true by everybody until recently. Now, what were the causes, the root causes of the disharmony that were identified by this 22-man committee? They range from numbers 1 to number 21. The key among them, which I like us to look at, is one, the attitude of medical practitioners, especially in leadership roles. And up to today, it is one of those things that is still seriously threatening the healthcare sector. Now, training institutions, all pro-medical doctors, none other people are being trained at the level of technicians. But I think that is changing now. Discriminatory remuneration, just like I said, coheres and comments, they are discriminating. Even though it was arrived at amicably, but again, if you look at what happened in 2009, coheres was not different from comments until the NMA and the government now entered into another agreement that now led to what is now called parity or disparity. And that is where the second round of conflict and disharmony has stemmed from. Please, can we go on? Of course, the skewed structure of management, you know that only doctors for now, medically qualified, can head institutions. Most of the time, you have non-implementation or selective implementation of scheme of service, just like as we're experiencing with our consultancy cadre now. Some people are saying this, we have a lot of news, whether correctly or incorrectly, but the point is that for 1 year, we have been struggling with implementation. But I can assure all of us that those days of struggle will soon be over. Then operation of the National Healthcare Insurance Scheme, the payment mechanism, what was agreed and what is contained in the book is fee for service for pharmaceutical services. There was no place where there was global capitation, but what we now have, we now have global capitation. We have even reached into the government to say, okay, fine, if you want global capitation of 750, take out 250 from there and put it specially for drugs. And then, of course, you can use the other 500 for whatever services you want to do. They have not responded because they want to have everything to themselves. Of course, the issue of Surgeon General, we don't need Surgeon General in Nigeria. This is not America. This is Nigeria. And what we have a minister and the minister or whoever is so appointed remains in his office, and whoever is the private doctor to the president remains there. So we have enough personnel. We don't need the Surgeon General in Nigeria. The recruitment of untrained and unlicensed personnel to practice medical records and all of that, that is not correct. There is medical records practice in Nigeria now. But what has happened is that doctors in their various private clinics can employ anybody, think that they can train everybody underground, and that is the beginning of quacks. So we also have some level of quackery in pharmacy, but within the health sector, all the quacks that you find are trained by medical doctors who believe that they know so much, and then they can train everybody just to do what they want to do. And that now also has a situation where trained personnel cannot find employment in those organizations. Trained professionals cannot find employment there because those places have been occupied by quacks. Then, of course, you have poor working conditions and healthcare environment. That's, again, is largely due to mismanagement and maladministration. Because if you know the amount of waste that goes on in government and government practices, you will understand what I'm saying. Of course, there's indiscipline in the health sector, a large dose of indiscipline goes across not only within the health sector, but even within the interprofessional areas. Yeah, of course, there's perennial staff shortage, and some of the times they are usually skewed against the non-medical people. You may have plenty of medical people, and yet very few of the non-medical people. The reward system and inequity, and of course, favoritism. Of course, the appointment of health minister. The NMA believes that only a medically qualified person can become the Minister of Health in Nigeria. But we have seen that the non-medically qualified ministers have done better than all the medically qualified ministers put together. But because of the pecuniary gains and the way they are able to coerce their members who are ministers to do their bidding, so they want to continuously lay claim to that office. But I can assure all of us that in the years ahead, all of that will change. Appointment of chief medical director and so on and so forth, all of that will also change. But these were the findings of that committee. Discriminatory definition of application of certain, like I mentioned before. Definition of the status of resident doctors. Of course, over the years have been able to get an act of parliament legitimizing the training of Nigerian resident doctors. But I think that is good enough because other professions can now ride on that to demand for their own special training, because everybody is now going the way of consultancy. We already have our college, and I think that the powers that be already in the process of ensuring that it is gazetted, and then of course we're working towards a national postgraduate college, and I'm sure that will see the light of day. Of course, as at that time, the issue of postgraduate colleges for other professionals was not there, but pharmacy was there, and like I said, that like I've said at so many fora, it is better to actually operate covertly rather than operating overtly, because these medical doctors, they are everywhere, they are ready to spot with even good things because of their pride and so on and so forth. 19. Of course, industrial unions and professional associations, delineations, everybody is overlapping, encroaching, pharmacists encroaching, doctors are encroaching, laboratory scientists. In fact, those ones are even worse. If you go to the medical lab, they will not only do MCS for you, they also dispense drugs and give to the patient and collect money. So they, of course, even the optometrists, we're having a meeting with the optometrist sometime in 2 weeks' time, where they themselves are the ones who have called for a memorandum of understanding. And I'll be leading the team of pharmacists to that meeting, where we are going to tell each other the truth. Because they think that pharmacists who dispense eyeglasses are encroaching into optometry practices. We also need to go and tell them that when they begin to dispense medicines to patients, they are also encroaching into pharmaceutical practices. And of course, we are definitely going to look at all of that. And then, of course, the non-compliance with laws and regulations under the Federal Ministry of Health. This is a very, very important aspect, because the NMA has conducted itself or considered itself into a cult along with the ministers of health. They have been able to sidetrack some of the laws, some of the pronouncements of government, and I believe that this is actually sabotage. And in the coming days, we are going to have to make a pronouncement in this area. So we can go on. So some of the examples of conflicts that we have had. I just listed a few here. Some time ago, the medical laboratory scientists came up and said that, look, our private medical laboratory services will no longer be registered. And then, of course, the enemy are not saying that they have what they call laboratory medicine, and therefore they can practice medical laboratory science. But the court has said no. Everything that has to do with laboratory, medical laboratory science remains under the purview of Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria. So MDCAN or NMGCN, you can go to wherever, but that is what the law says, and that is where it is. Here again, I've tried to re-echo what I said about Olikwe and Sankuti for emphasis purposes so that we know where the conflict actually started from. Can we go on? So that's still the same thing. And of course, that is the statement. Said, I noticed with dismay that this attack and counter-attack on personality and professionals, so on and so forth. So only recently, even the Health Attendants Association are also crying out against not only doctors, but nurses, med lab scientists, pharmacists, and so on and so forth. These are the attendants that will work it in the hospital. They also have an association. And if they are crying, and we at our professional levels are saying that we have a problem, that means there's really a problem. But what is important is that the WHO has actually defined the hospital attendant as all workers in the hospital, whether you are a doctor, pharmacist, nurses, or whatever it is. As long as you are in the hospital, you are a hospital attendant because you are there to give service. And that is what it is. And that is why government refers to everybody as health workers. It's only when we now begin to want to dichotomize that we begin to say health professionals, clinical, non-clinical. We all work in the same environment and therefore should have some basic things that are common to everybody. So segregation of the health workers as far as WHO is concerned. And that is why a non-doctor can be the head of WHO and nobody pass an eyelid. But here in Nigeria, the moment you put somebody else as minister or commissioner, the doctors will rise to say, no, it's only a doctor that can be a commissioner, that can be. Meanwhile, even in their private hospitals, the answer to administrators that they themselves appoint. They themselves appoint those ones in their private hospitals because they know what their colleagues are capable of doing. And all that they can do is to create this rivalry, this bad situation in the government hospitals, cause strikes. There are people that are diverted to their private hospitals. When they are quota to die, they return them back to the government hospitals. But I think we're getting to the end of all of that. So I think we can move on. And then, of course, some of the experiences that we have had in Nigeria, here I've mentioned the issuance of the circular on the consultancy for over 1 year. And we have had a situation where NMA seems to be attacking and writing petitions. But we are also not resting. We are also going to be writing down petitions. And we have already started firing back. I have this one, I think 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, and we're going to continue. Now, it is important that I mention this. In 2019, 2020, the president of PSN and the president of NMA then, that's Mazi Omabu and the one Dr. Francis Faduile, set up a joint committee between medicine, that's NMA and PSN, to fashion out an MOU. That job we did for the whole of that year. Yes, we had disagreements and so on and so forth, but in the end, we had an agreement. Because in reaching that agreement, we sought the opinion of pharmacists and doctors around Nigeria. And I can assure you that over 15,000 people participated in that exercise that brought about the MOU that was signed by the two presidents at the PSN Secretariat sometime in 2020. But unfortunately, with the coming of this NMA president, he has not seen any reason to look at that document to see whether there's anything that can be implemented for the good of the two professions. Rather, all that he's interested in how to score through the progress that is being made by pharmacists. He thinks that he can dictate to PSN who to side with and who not to side with. No, we have told him, and in clear terms, we have what we call a non-aligned position. You are our friend, so we are your friend. If you are our enemy, we stay away from you. But if you are issue of friendship and issue of cooperation, then we are able to do that. That is not to say that we have not had some areas of collaboration in the last couple of legislative pieces and things like that. Where we find it necessary to align with you, we align with you, but not to our own detriment. But if you want to say that you are going to not to align with us, even when we need to align with you for your own for mutual benefit, we may go against it and let both people suffer, because, like they say, when the elephants fight, it is the ground that suffer. I mean, the grass that suffer. But we will look at, and the interest of pharmacy is what we believe to be paramount at all times. So we'll move on. I've talked about that. Now, the problems that we are having, these are some of the efforts so far. And I want to just mention some other things, that there was a committee that was set up, Professional Harmony, in 2019, 2020. That committee is in limbo. And that committee was working until we were admitted into it, and we have not been able to make any presentation, but we did make a written presentation. That committee has not held any meeting in the whole of 2020 and 2021. And that committee is called the Technical Committee on Professional Harmony in the Health Sector, and is based in the Ministry of Labour. We hope that that committee will come alive. Then, of course, prior to that time, there was a committee on prescription rights. That same committee, because of NMA disagreement, has been in the limbo now for about 3 years. They also believe that someday we're going to come over that. And then, of course, the Ministry of Labour is currently engaging JOSU on health salary scale, and there are ongoing consultations. There have been judgments from NIC, and that is National Industrial Court of Nigeria. Some judgments have been selectively obeyed, and of course, it is now for the professional bodies to actually bring those judgments that have not been obeyed back to that court for enforcement. It can be done. And government, through the Presidential Salaries Committee, is currently meeting with health workers, including pharmacists, and PSN is currently sitting on that committee and negotiating with government directly on hazard allowance, as well as the issue of increment of retirement age of professionals, 65 for the generality, 70 for the consultants. And again, let me mention that while we're doing that, friends were saying consultants mean only medical doctors, and we said no, consultant means health consultancy. So either you're a consultant or you're not a consultant, and that has been agreed upon. But what is now left is the modus operandi of implementation. And I believe that the relevant arms of government and the Ministry of Health have started something in that regard. Meanwhile, the other professional group were supposed to have also done some part of the advocacy, but I think that is also missing. Now, another thing that also happened is that recently we had the memo, that's the circular creating the consultant pharmacy, in which doctor of pharmacy degree has been agreed upon and recognized as an entry point for pharmacists. That is a very important matter that we need to hold very dearly. I know that our doctors are also complaining that we now have 2 entry points. Do we have 2 entry points? They also have 2 entry points. So nothing amiss, and they cannot dictate for us what should be our entry point. And because we now have FAMD, we are going to dislodge the entire BFARM system. No, both are going to coexist until everybody converts into FAMD, and that will be so many years after now. Then, of course, recently you are all aware of the new pay structure for health professional interns and corpers, in which FAMD was also recognized, even though it was erroneously written as pharmacist with OD. We have since sought the correction of that from OD to FAMD. So I'm sure in the days ahead, you will see the new corrected version. Then, what is the way forward for pharmacists? I think this is where lies our presentation today. And I think I'm going to take it a little more slowly here. Now, we need to be proactive in PCN and PSN. We must be proactive in our actions. Sometimes we also need to go and test the waters. We need to test the waters. We need to feel. We need to be agent provocateurs at some levels. We need to do that. 2, we need to have strict adherence to ethics, because if you must go to equity, you must go with clean hands. If there are areas where we are encroaching, let us see what we can do And why are we encroaching? We are encroaching because other people are encroaching into our practice. So we can begin to sit down and begin to have MOUs amongst ourselves. We can do that. And like I have always said, with PCN can help us in this light a lot. NAFDA can also help us. PCN can insist that it wants to inspect all private hospitals and clinics and that they must conform. Otherwise, there should be no drugs dispensed there. And it's important and something that we want to call a wishful thinking or wish. If it were possible to have a situation where our friends in NAIP, that is industrial setting, the people who market drugs, if they will be able to stay away from all these private clinics where there are no pharmacists and stop these our friends of drugs and drug supply for some time, you will see that there is going to be tremendous respect for pharmacists. And the same thing goes for our ACPN and even those of us in the hospital. If we can hold on to this firmly and begin to treat doctors and ask them the relevant questions before drugs are issued to them, I'm sure they will take us more seriously. We must insist on the full adherence to the provisions of the National Drug Provision or National Drug Policy of 2005. That document may be small, but it is full of breakthroughs. Plenty of the things that we have achieved in pharmacy today, particularly in hospital pharmacy, has been because we in the hospital sector have insisted on the implementation of the provisions of that policy. We have insisted. Though there's still a lot to do, but there's still a lot to do, but we have gained from it, and we must insist on the full adherence. And I can assure you that in the next few days, the revised version will be launched. It will now be National Drug Policy 2021, because that has been the pipeline since last year or so. Now we need to lobby. We need to do advocacy to the legislature, to the executive arm of government. We need a lot of it because that is what Nigeria now means. Lobbying can mean so many things. Lobby can mean so many things. Advocacy, if you do advocacy and you are not lobbying, and you are not providing logistics for the lobby, well, the Nigerian system these days really doesn't work like that. But I think we need a lot of the high dose of lobby and a high dose of advocacy. We need adherence to the provisions of the laws guiding our practice. We must guide our practice as much as possible. We ourselves must adhere to the laws. We must be seen as people who are law-abiding and so on and so forth. Without that, it might be difficult for us to be able to move forward because, like I said before, if you must go to equity, you must go with clean hands. Pharmacists must engage with others, whether we like it or not. We must engage with ourselves. The ACPM must engage with AHAP. AHAP must engage with NAPA. Individual pharmacists must engage with each other. Pharmacy A must engage with pharmacy B. If you don't have a particular medicine in your shop at the time a patient comes for it, you can get from your neighbor. You and your neighbor, you can put your resources together and buy in bigger quantities at lower prices. You must be talking about collaboration and cooperation. Of course, pharmacists must also engage with other professions. There's the referral system. A patient comes to your shop, comes with an ocular problem or whatever that you cannot handle, but you can send it to an ophthalmologist or send to an optometrist. The same way an optometrist should be able to send his prescription back to the pharmacy for filling. But again, this is where the problem lies. There are no prescriptions coming out from the private facilities, and therefore there is no prescription for the ACPM members to fill. And that is why ACPM members must also now begin to think of diagonizing and making prescriptions. And that was what led us to that prescription rights. But again, we know that all over the world, pharmacists have certain level of prescription rights. So, and that is where it is, and that is the best practice. We must embrace new concepts and new frontiers of knowledge. Like I said, many years in the past, we're talking about product, but this time we're talking about clinical practice. So there must be a meeting point. It's not just only making the drug, but you must be able to know what the drug will do or the therapeutic outcome that you're going to have in every patient. Pharmacists, that the PCN and PSN, must strategically and frontally must face those challenges and obstacles. We must do them. If we need to go to the court to go and get interpretations and get prosecution, we should get it done. Essential drugs law makes it a crime for anybody to run the DRF down in this country. We should be able to assume that law and prosecute a few medical directors for running down the various DRFs in their various hospitals. But I know that PSN has done something, and we are doing quite a lot at the background to see that this thing comes to light. Right now, I can tell you that there is an inquiry going on at the level of the House of Reps. Inquiry into the DRF operations in some of the teaching tertiary hospitals in Nigeria, and it's ongoing. I'm going to cover all the hospitals. It's something that's happened. The PSN should advocate for special pharmacy salaries. It's something we have been doing. We have put this into motion since the time of Mrs. Later Mrs. Ayamu. What the JOS will now carries about as their salary structure for demand was actually an offshoot of this salary structure that we built, that we made over that time. And the same thing now, what has transmitted into what is now known as the scheme of service for consultant pharmacy. A great deal of it was developed by AHAP in the days of Magis and my friend we did all of that in anticipation that this one was going to come. Then, of course, if we cannot get pharmacy salary, then we should advocate for a single spine salary structure. A single spine salary structure that will bring about some level of harmony. And this single spine salary structure should be based on the 2009 job evaluation report. And of course, government must engage all health professionals in a holistic manner. Call everybody to a round table. If I was Minister of Labor or Minister of Health, I would have used this opportunity of NARB strike. It's okay, fine. If you say you're on strike, then we'll call everybody, let us talk about it, and then we'll begin to delineate and begin to arrive at decisions that will be implementable for the good of Nigerians. And of course, government must abrogate that Decree 108 of 1985 and reenact a new one. And one of the shortcomings of that decree is the fact that it places the management and leadership of all tertiary hospitals in the hands of medical doctors. It also says that there shall be only 2 directories. Who said so? And that was the reason why many pharmacies were, over the years, stagnated. But we have been able to overcome that now. So, can we move forward? Professional boundaries and scope must be determined, and areas of overlap, where we identify them, we must resolve them. There must be areas of overlap, no matter how, but we should be able to resolve those areas of overlap. Professional groups should be encouraged to dialogue in order to clarify issues and resolve them. NMA should be able to meet with PSN. Look, we have this problem. There must be dialogue. It's not fight. PSN must be able to meet with nurses and say, okay, look, this is what we want to do. How do you see it? How does this affect your practice? They will say, okay, this is how we want to see it, how we are doing it, and so on and so forth. Pharmacists must be professional in outlook and conduct at all times, and this will earn us a great deal of respect. We must be professional in outlook and conduct at all times. And the PCN, which is charged with responsibility to regulate pharmacy practice on that ramification and aspect, should improve on her inspection and monitoring roles. It is not only government hospitals that we should be inspecting, they should also be inspecting private hospitals. When we inspect these private hospitals and sanction a few of them, the others will run for they will scamper for safety. That is a way, because one of the things that the enemy actually is doing by its constant threat and so on and so forth is that it is touching on the economic lives of pharmacists, and we cannot allow this to continue. And therefore, we must also use our own machinery to also touch and impinge on their own economic survival. Once you do that, they will be jolted to responsibility, and then they will call for truth. We will call for truth. Definitely. If we don't do this, like they went to court before and we won, we go and take up that. Hospital DRF must be re-engineered, and the extant laws must be reviewed. That is already work in progress, and very shortly a new DRF policy is going to come up. Boards and leadership of hospital and management structures must consist of all health professionals, and all health professionals must show good communication skills and show respect for one another. This is one very sore area. People don't know how to talk. People don't know how to give respect to each other. People just talk anyhow. But you'll be too dismayed. But particularly for those of us in the hospital, when doctors talk to other professionals, or even professionals talk even to doctors, it's full of anger, full of venom, and so on and so forth. All these arising from the fact that there are conflicts and that no one is really happy working with the other. And that's why I said it will always lead to sabotage. And who will get something from the sabotage is the patient. And who is the patient? Anybody can be a patient. And of course, there must be discipline for and amongst all health professionals. there must be discipline. If there's no discipline, then we are not going anywhere, because without discipline, no society survives. All professionals and regulatory agencies must act only within the confines of the law. They must act and only within the confines. MDCM must not seek in any way to regulate pharmacy practice. PCN must not seek in any way to regulate another profession's practice. Everybody should regulate what it is empowered by law to do. And these are some of the ways I think that we can actually help to make our pharmacy practice much better. And of course, healthcare delivery much better. Please, can we go on?
Sorry.
So, yeah, we're almost getting to the end. So,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, healthcare delivery is a multidisciplinary in nature and requires team approach. There can be and there should be vertical as well as horizontal referrals. And interprofessional rivalries, conflicts, and disharmony is very injurious to healthcare delivery. I would believe that the mutual respect, there must be mutual respect for all and by all health professionals. I want to take it again. The healthcare delivery is multidisciplinary and requires stream approach to work. There should be vertical as well as horizontal referrals. By vertical, I mean that you can refer from one level to another. I can also refer among that same level. For example, the consultant pharmacist, a consultant pharmacist in cardiology now gets a patient who also has maybe oncologic problem, should be able to refer. That's horizontal. When we're talking about vertical, you see a patient that needs to go back to the doctor, please let that patient go back to the doctor to go and see the doctor. If the patient needs to see the nurse, let that patient go to see the nurse. That is vertical referral. Interprofessional rivalry, conflicts, and disharmony is injurious to healthcare delivery system everywhere in the world, and it is worse in Nigeria. And that is why our health services are very, very poor, because most of the time, those who should be adjudicators or those who should bring about those who should put people in line, those who should monitor and evaluate, are taking sides with those who are destroying the healthcare system because of the nature of what we have found ourselves. We have built strong personalities, strong individuals at the expense of strong institutions. And there must be mutual respect for all and by all health professionals. There must be mutual respect, no matter how. There must be mutual respect, because in an atmosphere where there's no mutual respect, then there will be chaos. And when there's chaos, people will suffer. And who knows who is going to suffer? We just might be part of it. And we pray that is not our portion. And of course, after now, you're going to see the references. Dr. Bello, can you go on?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for listening. I really thank God that you have given me this opportunity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a very good audience. Thank you very much, and God bless all of us. Thank you. Go back to Dr. Bello and Dr. Daba.
Dr. Danjuma, on to you. Are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm done. I've said thank you. I think the slides are finished. Okay. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, I'm calling the moderator, Dr. Danjuma. Okay, is on the line. Can you take it off for him there? Dr. Baba, Najuma. I think he has a network issue. So we want to thank Dr. Dan for that great and inspiring presentation. It was a wonderful one. The floor is now open for contribution, for comments, and so on and so on. If you have any comment or contribution, can you please raise up your hand so that we can call on you? You are free to unmute yourself, or you send your comment or question to the chat box, please. Any
Hello,
contribution?
Dr. Bello.
Okay, Dr. Mado, yeah.
All right.
You have the floor, sir.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Dan for the wonderful presentation he has done. Please, before I will make any question or whatever, I know that Dr. Baba seems to be having network issue. And we are aware that Dr. Dan is also a PSN presidential aspirant. We may want him to talk to us for about 3 to 5 minutes about his intention when he becomes the PSN president. Then we can now ask questions based on his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do I have the floor?
On to you.
All right, fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you have the floor.
Good evening. Yeah, good evening once again, my dear colleagues. I am proud to be one of you. And I'm also happy that I have this opportunity of speaking to you about my aspirations. Let me start by saying that I'm a founding member of this group, that's the Clinical Pharmacists Association of Nigeria. And that I've done everything possible to ensure that we are where we are today. So when you talk about the history of this CPAN, I think I've also made some level of a contribution to its emergence. When I was acquiring my degree in my Doctor of Pharmacy degree and my WPCP, I had no CPAN in mind. But here it is now. And of course, we've been able to do what we need to do. And of course, because I'm also teaching clinical pharmacy in the university, I've become part of you. So thank you very much. I also want to say that that CPAN became an interest group in PSN. It was because people like us believe that that is the way to go. And I can conveniently tell that I was the one that moved that motion at the PSN council meeting. And that we should give some level of, some time so that by the turn of events at the next council meeting, it was going to be ratified. And that's exactly what happened. So I've been a part of CPAN. Now, what do I have in mind for CPAN? CPAN has come to stay, and CPAN will continue to be a pace setter as far as clinical practice is concerned in Nigeria. And I'm going to work in such a manner that we will empower CPAN to set standards for the practice of clinical practice, whether it's in the industry, because there's also some element of clinical practice there, whether it's in the university where they're teaching students clinical pharmacy, there's clinical practice, whether it's in the community, there's plenty of clinical practice in community, and there's plenty of clinical practice in the hospital setting. So we're going to assist CPAN to ensure that we have these SOPs and standards spread all around Nigeria so that there will be uniformity of practice, whether we like it or not. Clinical pharmacy practice has come to stay. And let me also remind us that AHAP has also lent its voice by making sure that pharmaceutical care has become the philosophy of practice of pharmacy in Nigeria. So these two are going to go together. We're going to harmonize them. And of course, CPAN is going to be the body, the organ that is going to drive this from the very beginning, and we're going to support it all the way through. Now, as president of PSN, I'm not going to be president of CPAN. I'm going to be president of PSN. So what I got to say is that each unit, each technical group, each pressure group, or each interest group will have its due share of PSN presidents. We're going to follow everybody. Nobody's going to be left out. We're going to work for a PSN that works for all. No group, no individual is going to be left behind. And I repeat again, we're going to work for a PSN that works for all. CPAN, we already told you that, okay, that is clinical practice. You're going to anchor that, and we're going to ensure that, yes, you're not just going to anchor it and go pro bono. No, you're going to anchor it, and you're also going to benefit, because like they say, a laborer is deserving of his wages. So we're all going to sit down together and fashion it, and that's why I always say that, yes, we can. I didn't say I can. I said we can, because one person cannot be we. We're all going to sit down together and work together as a team to achieve the dream and desired PSN that we want. And the PSN that we actually want is the PSN that works for all. Now, as pharmacists, yes, pharmacist welfare and so on and so forth, but you cannot divert pharmacist welfare from the society in which we live and practice. And therefore, we must work towards ensuring medicine safety. We must ensure towards ensuring that the people's health is assured at all times. It is based on this that we are going to ensure continuity of service. Whether our medical colleagues like it or not, they are bound to work with us, and we are going to work with them, but they will succumb. We are not going to ask them to earn our respect or whatever it is. If they cannot earn our respect, we will force our respect on them. That is the way to go, because if for over time we have been cajoling, talking, and if they still believe that the best thing to do is to continue to repress pharmacy, then of course we are going to touch on their economic interest. When we touch their economic interest and they know that yes, it's for real, they will call for a truce, just like I said before. So chairman, CPAN, and members of CPAN will be the basis upon which clinical practice is going to be judged in Nigeria. And we have already started on a good note, yes, because every Friday we are sharing ideas on issues that bother us on healthcare in Nigeria. And we have been able to do this, and we are documenting them, and shortly after now, you'll see that the word CPAN will become a household word in Nigeria. Now, we have also gone ahead to say that we're going to have a journal, and you have called for inputs, you have called for manuscripts, and so on and so forth. This PSN is going to help you, and it's going to partner with you in ensuring that it is not only published, but it is widely disseminated. Of course, thank God for the technology that we have now, so you don't even need too much paper. So we're going to help you to do that, because even the PSN already has an information unit in the National Secretariat. So whatever you bring, you simply put it there and put it on the website for people to see. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the little promise I'm going to be able to make to you right now. But let me say that I have contributed my little quota to PSN in the last couple of years. I'm still willing to do more if you give me the opportunity when you come to Port Harcourt in November of 2021 and cast your vote for me and support me. Not only because I'm yours, but because I assure you that I am the candidate that will take PSN into the future. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Dr. Ibrahim, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, you're clear now.
It's okay. Thank you for that wonderful and elaborate presentation, Dr. Dan. Before I open the lines for contributions and questions, I would like to still acknowledge the presence of some few individuals, all the fellows of the PSN in the house this evening, all fellows of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists. You are all welcome to this presentation. I can see Professor Cyril Osifo, Professor Ray Ozolua. You've been a constant figure in this platform. Dr. Lolu Ojo, you are all welcome. I can see so many profs, Dr. Motiai, our own able Secretary General, and our own CPAN National Chairman, Dr. Joseph Madu. You're all welcome. So now we'll start by opening the lines for questions to our presenters. To our presenter, Dr. Dan. If you have a question, just indicate by a raise of hand, then you'll be given the opportunity to ask. For now, I've not seen any hands. I've not seen hands up. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
We have
Dr. Timipre.
Have to answer.
Dr. Timipre, just unmute yourself and then ask your question.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Dan, for that wonderful presentation. But I just wanted to mention that on the chat box, we have a lot of questions there. Moderator, please, can you look at the chat? We have some questions there. Maybe we can start to pick them one by one. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. While I do that, I also welcome Dr. Solomon Nwafuru. Chairman, I've seen your hand.
Hello.
Don't worry, I'll give you. Yes, Dr. Solo.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening, my wonderful moderator.
Thank you.
The presenter, Dr. Dan, you really did a lot of surgery to this topic. This is a perfect surgery of no complications. But just like a little thing I want to chip in is our problems are within us, not entirely with the physicians. I agree with you that if the physicians cannot agree, we will force, I like the word, forcing it to them for them to accept. But I'm making a reference now to Decree 10 of 1985, where this problem started, is Decree 10. I could remember I was one of the committee members appointed by the national organized level to review that Decree 10. And I was the secretary to that committee. I perused and appraised that decree from A to Z. I did not see where they say only 2 directors must exist in the hospital. Let us bear in mind that in this, our consultancy implementation that is coming to bear, there are some pharmacists that will not go through the pathway of consultancy. Rather, they will climb through the ladder to the directorship. The same thing that is similar to that issue of appointment or promotion of people to director is similar to people in the academics. It's similar to people in the medics. What am I saying? There is a Bible called Public Service Rule. That Bible, PSR, is used for appointment, discipline, and promotions. And that's why if you check, for instance, in the universities, there was a time few professors exist in the university. But take, for instance, now, Faculty of Pharmacy, University of Benin, they have up to 29 to 30 professors existing. That means if they go by the old method, there is no way they have promoted a lot of people to respective positions of professors. If you come to the hospital and say it's only 2 people that will be director, maybe medical director and director of admin, it is wrong. That means you are now stopping people from reaching the peak of their career. And the same question that I asked a representative or head of service that visited our hospital. In the medics, their peak is COMEX 7. Why is it that there will be a lot of people in that COMEX 7, but in the hospital, only few people will be allowed to reach the position of director? So we do respect the presenter, Dr. Dan, please, sir. I want people to take this thing up when you go to interprofessional meetings and thereabout, that such law or such clause does not exist in that Decree 10 of 1985, which was smuggled in by Professor Lukoyo Ramsokudi through the IBB era. It doesn't exist. And some people that don't want to go through the process of consultancy should be allowed to attend. Thank God that UITH, University of Ilorin Teachers, has started, where they promoted 3 pharmacists to directors. It's a welcome development. And that thing should be allowed to flow to all areas of pharmacy practice in Nigeria. That is number 1. Number 2, remember that the physicians are the government. They speak government and they operate government. What do I mean? They are everywhere. If they will not cease, if they don't cease to be the managers, anyway, you made mention of it that with time, it will not continue. I pray it doesn't continue. And second, and thirdly, the issue of open drug market should be addressed. It is affecting the pharmacy profession in Nigeria. It should be addressed and addressed very well. That for us to eradicate it or find another way of balkanizing it, because it is actually affecting us. And finally, this issue of the people in the hospital should not own a clinic is another wrong one. They should allow some people in the hospital or in the academics to open their own pharmacy. The reason is, if you don't allow your colleague in the hospital or your colleague in the academia to open and own his own pharmacy, will you be happy when the charlatans, the illiterates, the drug vendors are now occupying everywhere as the owners of pharmacy? And secondly, the issue of rotational HOD,
I think it's okay. Dr. Solo,
thank you, sir.
there are so many hands up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Let me bow out from this place. Thank you.
Thank you. Then you can bring your hand down. Dr. Joseph Madu, our own chairman, I think I should allow you to talk. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I believe I'm still audible enough.
Yes.
Let me thank Dr. Dan once more for what Dr. Solo described as a perfect surgery. He did so well. And I want to let him know that we are doing our best in SIPAN. We are also observing the presidential aspirants. Of course, two persons spoke before him, Professor Osifo and Dr. Lolojo. But what I want to say and what I've been saying to all of them is that we are all one family. Family starting with PH instead of F. So we are all one family. And even if any of them doesn't win, that person should still remember that that is pharmacy that wins. And that person should continue to contribute towards the advancement of pharmacy. I want to thank him for telling us this night that he moved the motion for SIPAN becoming an interest group of PSN. We appreciate that, sir. And I want to also say something at this juncture. I have been telling my elders that seniors or elder people, elderly or leaders, they are like the Pope. They are infallible. So what I'm trying to say this night is not about correcting my leader, Dr. Dan, but it's something that I have seen happening in pharmacy cycles throughout. And this night I can see very highly senior pharmacists in this meeting. And I think it's an opportunity for me to say it. That is about SIPAN standard operating procedures, which we launched on our website recently. Actually, like I see some persons saying, a pharmacist part of Johesu, this and that. I know one of us that is a very strong pillar in Johesu, and I've been communicating with him. If you look at the statements by Johesu recently, you will not see Johesu using the word doctors, because some persons believe that the name doctors is their own. And if we keep on calling them doctors, we can't come tomorrow and say that they are no longer doctors. So we use their perfect name, physicians, or if we don't use that, we say medical doctors. And that is what we have adopted in SIPAN. And I also want to let us know this night too, that on our standard operating procedures, we do not use the word shops, because like somebody said, the open market is a rape to the profession of pharmacy, that any dropout can run pharmacy. And so, sir, in case you become the PSN president tomorrow, so that you uphold this standard operating procedures of SIPAN, like the use of language, which is very, very important to us, so that we don't go about saying our shop, if one person has shop, another person should allow him to have his own shop or something like that. These are the things that make people feel that our profession is a trade instead of a practice. So, sir, that is just the area I want, in case you become PSN president tomorrow, so that you carry, as you carry SIPAN along, you carry us along in these ways, so that we use the correct language, so that people don't come tomorrow and say, they are traders who want to, just like some persons say, customers, some people say costing of drugs in the hospital. I think we have always been saying all these things. I just want to draw our attention to that this night. God bless you, sir. May you live very long. And I wish you success in all your endeavors and pursuits. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you. I think Dr. Dancer.
Yeah, can I respond now?
Can we take the last one, then you can join together and then respond to?
Okay, that would be great.
Okay, so we call on Dr. Ugu Christopher. Oh, yes, disappeared. Okay, Dr. Dan, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Let me start from
hello.
Is that Dr. Ugu Christopher?
Yeah, I'm still Pharmacist Ugu Christopher, not Dr.
Okay,
yet.
Pharmacist.
Okay,
Pharmacist Ugu Christopher. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very
Go
much
ahead.
for this. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to speak now. Yes, I must appreciate Dr. Orunwese for a very explicit presentation he had for us, because I know quite fine that most of us, from the questions on the background, it shows the level of our exposure and level of our involvement in the intra and interprofessional participation or resolving rivalry. Because a pharmacist, I under Johesu, our level of involvement. The 5 unions that joined together to form just a joint health sector union, which NOAP, which is an umbrella body that's holding on to pharmacy, is part of it. My contribution as well to ensure that for Dr. Dan is, we know the role the current president played to ensure that we are involved in the health sector politics in terms of our having a union. I want to ask, if you become the PSN president, at what efforts, and at the same time, knowing where you are coming from that umbrella body of AHAPN. Most of us, we have not been involved in NOHA activities because AHAPN declined to participate actively in NOHA activities. So if you become the PSN president, I hope you are going to sustain that ability by supporting AHAPN and PSN involvement of both NOHA and JOHESU activities. So I would like to know where your involvement is, because it involves, just like Olumide said, where your heart is, ensure that your money is there. Because their level of payment, contributions, level of levy being attributed to sustain the professional bodies in those families. So I want just to emphasize, I know whether your level of involvement to ensure that pharmacists are not being left out in the politics of the Nigerian health sector. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, do I have the floor?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, let me start by responding to the comments made by my respected chairman. I apologize for the use of the word doctors and shops. Actually, I had the word premises and physicians, even if you look through the presentation itself. Maybe for want of word to explain and to drive home the points I wanted to make, those were actually slips, because you are what you profess. And I believe that very much, because long time ago, under Uwaga and Pharmacist Ogwa, I got to know, and I agreed since then, that pharmacy have premises and they have practices. Now that takes me to, and that we are not traders. We are health professionals, whether we run pharmaceutical premises or whatever. Important that the premises are registered, they are regulated, and therefore it's a practice. And of course, when I teach in school, we say, okay, some of the times you cannot even just say that, okay, pharmacy is just a practice, it's also a business. So maybe that's what even makes it more of a practice than more of a practice than just being a profession. So it's a practice, a profession, it's a place where practice takes place in whatever form. So I really appreciate that, and then of course we'll continue to imbibe that. Let me talk on the issue of Joesu Apa Nuap. I want to state categorically that Joesu is a creation of PSN. For those of you who have been following PSN right from the days of, in the twilight days of President Ahimian, dovetailing into President Okwa, and that was when I mentioned the the fact that Joesu was when I mentioned the 2009 agreement, 2009 job evaluation. That 2009 job evaluation actually brought to the fore the need for all other professionals to come together. And that was the birth of Joesu. Joesu was born in PSN office. Not anywhere else, but inside PSN. That is where Joesu was born. So pharmacy is the progenitor and the mover of Joesu. Now, people will always want to skew things around one way or the other. Yes, we agree that AHAP is not a trade union. However, PSN is a member of APA, that is Assemblies of Health Professionals Association, and that is where PSN is involved. So we in PSN, we in AHAP have said that PSN must impress it on Joesu to admit NAHAP, or that is AHAP. So the issue of NUAP and AHAP, we are going to continue to look at it to see areas of convergence of interest, and then we are going to look at it at the appropriate time. So that is what I can promise you, but we will not, like I said, our interest will be that of non-aligned by become president of PSN. We are going to align with those who align with us, and those who do not align with us, we know how to deal with their matter. Now, let me go to Dr. Wafuru's matter. The issue of PSR we'll continue to look at. Directorate matter in pharmacy, hospital pharmacy. Nobody has knocked it out. What we now have is a dual. We now have two levels of two cadres, two levels of practice within the hospital. You either go through the directorate or you go through the consultancy, and that is very, very certain. So nobody is going to be stopped. And let me refer back to a letter that was done in 2014 in the heat of the Joesu crisis that says that every eligible pharmacist on CONHES 14 should be moved to CONHES 15. So it does not in any way, there is no place in the civil service that say people must not get to the career, to the peak of their career. There are hospitals where there are multiple directors now. You just mentioned the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. LUT also has multiple directors. There are also hospitals where deputy directors are on CONHES 15 already. Deputy directors are on CONHES 15. So we're going to follow this path and we're going to follow through. So that is that. On the issue of ODM, that's open drug market. Yes, of course, the appropriate mechanism has been put in place, which is National Drug Distribution Guidelines. We will ensure that we follow through. We should stop paying lip service to the National Drug Distribution Guidelines. Once we follow through with that, what it means that the people at Bridget Market, for example, in conjunction with other stakeholders, playing according to the rules, will locate to a location where they can be regulated, giving right to CWC. So I think we should be able to look at that. Then on the issue of hospital pharmacists and pharmacists who are not ACPM members wanting to own premises, that is being addressed at the level of intra and interprofessional committee. We have made agreements and we are going to follow through with those agreements. Then what is important is that when we do come up with resolutions, and that's why I said we need a very high dose of discipline. If, for example, you say I, as a hospital pharmacist, will be entitled or will be allowed to open premises. Okay, one. Now, what of my colleague in ACPN who already has one? That means we should be able to allow him to have two premises. Because I have a stable job, I have one job as a hospital pharmacist. The lecturer also has a job as hospital pharmacist. Okay, if you want to go beyond that, it therefore means that you are going to have to employ another pharmacist to take charge, because the law says that every pharmacy must be under the direction and the management of its continuous supervision of a superintendent pharmacist. That's what the law says. And the new law that we're hoping that God will allow the president to assent to has given the basis for all of these things that we're looking for. For example, the PCN has said that we should be looking towards satellite pharmacy concept. And then, of course, there's also the community extension program. All these are things that have been put in place to ensure that people will go to underserved areas and give service. If you are in your the primary place of work, yes, you can open your shop, your premises, but you must obey the simple rules. Will that pharmacy sell prescription-only medicines when you are not there or when there's no pharmacist there? So these are things that we need to clear. And when we clear them, we obey the simple rules and the simple guidelines. I think everybody is going to be better for it. And that was why I said in my presentation that we need what we call intra-collaboration and intra-cooperation, not just the external. We must also cooperate from within. So it is important that we look at all of this. Then on the issue of public service rules, yes, fine. And as of today, we know that from the Decree 10 of 1985, until that decree is abrogated, if you go back and read it again, say there shall be two directorates, Directorate of Administration and Clinical Services. It is Director of Clinical Services that has now turned into what they call the CMAC, that's the Chairman Medical Advisory Committee. But through constant advocacy, we have been able to overcome that, and that is why you now see that there's hardly any hospital at the federal level that does not have a director now. Otherwise, many of our predecessors retired as chief pharmacists, assistant directors, or even less than that. But since 2008, 2009, many of us have become directors. Many of us are over 10 years as directors now, a situation that never happened before. Even at the level of the Federal Ministry of Health, which is Directorate of Food and Drugs, there are multiple directors there. It is not only one person that is director of this, but the most senior director becomes the substantive head of that division. So people will be promoted to grade level 15. That's CONHED 15. However, there will be rules whether, okay, it's going to be transitional, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. That's another different ballgame, which we are going to look at. And we as a profession, we will sit down, determine what it is, look at it within the context of the public service rules, and see how best we can situate it. So some of the things we can address straight away. Some of the other things we are going to address situated within the confines, within the context of what is on ground. That is how we're going to do it. So for JUHESU, it is not only JUHESU, it's JUHESU and APA. PSN is represented at the level of APA. Right now, there is a committee of presidents and secretaries of various professionals. I am a member of that committee because I represent the PSN president on that committee. The deputy president of PSN is also on that committee. And that committee has, in all of this, we are the only two people who are representing. All the other people are the presidents and the secretaries of those professional bodies. But meanwhile, like I said, I'm a representative of the president, and the deputy president is also a representative of society. So that is to show to you the level to which they hold us as PSN and the respect that they have given to us. Now, as at the level of the Association of Professional Bodies of Nigeria, I also represent PSN on that body. When the president is available, he also attends the meetings. So when they see me, they see PSN. When the president himself comes, of course, it's now double PSN. So we have respect along those lines. But what NMA has done to us in the last couple of months and what have you, I have even reported verbally to the president of that body that he should please see what he can do to ensure that NMA stops this issue of attacking pharmacists, and that if he continues that same way, we too are going to find a way of ensuring that we retaliate. So for the issue of NOAP, my brother, we're going to look at NOAP, we're going to look at AHAP. We're going to have to sit down honestly. We must sit down honestly within ourselves to find the best way forward. Now, let me tell you a little bit about NOAP. NOAP transmitted from NUPTAM, and I'm sure you know how NUPTAM came about. Now, in all honesty, NOAP so far so good. There are things that NOAP has done here that has benefited pharmacists because we are mentioned. But it is not impossible for us as pharmacists to have an association or a trade union of our own. So we're not going to rest on that. But let me also say that NMA is not a trade union. NARD is not a trade union. Yet they are sitting with government. And I can tell you on good authority that PSN is sitting with government, representing the interest of pharmacists. AHAP is sitting with government and representing the interest of pharmacists. What you saw as the new salary structure for interns and what have you is a creation of what AHAP stood for. And what you are going to see in a couple of days is a creation of what AHAP has done. What you have also seen now as what's it called? I told you about the ongoing introspection of the drug revolving fund is various sorts. It's a creation of AHAP. I forgot to tell you that the federal government has mandated all hospitals to ensure that they have compounding units or meaning manufacturing laboratories. We didn't have to go through judicial to do that. We didn't have to go through AHAP to do that. I mean, we didn't have to go through NOAP to do that. But government has seen that. We now have decentralized narcotic stores. We didn't have to go through all of this. Where we need them, we are going to play along. They are not our enemies. We are not going to stop being members of judicial or we are not going to stop being members of AHAP. We are not going to stop being members of APA. NOAP, we have also said, according to the AHAP leadership, have taken a position. So for now, you will spare me that because I don't want to insult the sensibilities of the hospital and administration group of people. I am not the chairman and I'm not the president of PSN. You will spare me that, but I can assure you that when I become president of PSN, we will definitely be able to sit down and chart a way forward for the hospital and administrative arm of PSN to go. And whatever way we agree, that is the way we are going to go. And I can assure you that we'll achieve success. In some areas, we need to go solo. DRF is a solo matter. And that is why we are winning in that area. Consultancy was a solo matter. That is why we are winning in those areas. So if there are any other areas that require joint effort with other unions and other professionals, we'll definitely do that. And that was why I use the word non-aligned. A day will also come where we may also have to align with even our so-called enemies, doctors. So long as the interests are mutual and the benefits will be mutual. Once we do that and we go back to our trenches, it doesn't stop us from finding at each other. So like they say, no permanent enemies, no permanent foes, but what we have will be permanent interests. Thank you very much. I hope I have been able to try to explain. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that elaborate explanation. And I think I have my own question. Since I'm the moderator, you can still attend. I hope you can still allow me to ask my question.
Why not?
Yeah, thank you. So my question is from the perspective of trainees, and I'm happy that we have some our professors in this discussion tonight. We understand that we have SCPN as the practitioners that are into community services or community practice. Yeah. But if you go through their curriculum, I have not seen anywhere that community services, community approaches is being taught in school, which means And what I refer to as community services, anything that has to do with all these immunization services, reproductive health services, you can talk of community engagement, because every of their actions in community practice is targeted at the population. But all these things are not being taught. If elected the PSN president, what are you going to do to interface with our curriculum developers to infuse into the curriculum? Because most of the graduates are being turned out today. After graduation, if they can't find job with the public service, they automatically will go into community practice. So, and you see a young pharmacist graduating, going to community practice without any form of community experiences. So what are we going to do to engage our academia so as to infuse this kind of teachings? Because that is the basis for, we are talking of immunization services today. It is in public health that all these things are taught. And the public health we are talking about here is all about community services. Everything revolves around community services. And that is the area of even our four-part compendium of PCN, which gives power of a wide range of activities that the community pharmacists are supposed to provide. But all those things are just missing. So what are you going to do differently so as to encourage our academia to infuse that into the core courses that they study in our various universities? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Let me start by saying that it is not entirely correct to say that our graduates, or pharmacy graduates, are not being prepared for community services. It's not entirely correct, but maybe largely correct. I'm going to draw from my experience as a teacher too at the Niger Delta University. I teach in the faculty and I teach in the Department of Clinical Pharmacy. I know there's a course we call Introduction to Management that is being taught. We also teach Introduction to Disease States and Therapeutics, including issues that have to do with vaccine preventable diseases and all of that. And then, of course, there's also entrepreneurship, which is taught as part of management. Of course, the pharmacy jurisprudence too tells you about how to conduct yourself, what to do, and all of that. All of these are preparing the person for independent life. Most of the universities in Nigeria now also believe that every university graduate must undergo some training in entrepreneurship. And this is something that pharmacy lecturers have foresaw long ago, and they have infused it. And then, of course, in the pharmacy teaching too, you have what they call CWEs, students in industrial work experience, because it's not everything that's going to be faculty based. Some will be externship. Now, the problem with CWEs and those externship kind of things is the fact that there is no synergy, direct synergy between the university and the community, for example, or even the government agencies that are supposed to provide spaces for these students to be trained. That's what they call industrial training. Many of the students believe that they must come to the hospital for training. When they don't have spaces, if you go back to the class, you will find that those who actually had some, who had the opportunity of going to pharmacies to train, you will see that when they are answering, when they are answering questions concerning probably the names of drugs, dosage forms, and things like that, they might even be a little more better than those who did in the hospitals. So, as PSN president, what we are going to do is that we're going to harness all of this together and see how we're going to rebrand and re-engineer those areas, because the NUC has a part to play. And then, of course, the 5-year program may not be as detailed as the 6-year program. So all of this, we're going to look at the academia, where they will sit, the people from the community are going to sit down, the people from the hospital are going to sit down, the people from the industrial group are going to sit down, because at the first degree level, you are actually producing a generalist pharmacist who should be able to fit into any of the areas of practice that he or she finds in or herself. So we're going to look at all of that and see how we're going to have a blend, a mix of all the items or the various inputs you want us to have that will make up that curriculum, that will make them to be more balanced than what you think they are today. But I want to say in all honesty that those who have found themselves in community practice, I say this with all modesty of achievement because I see some of the products that are produced from Divided Delta University right here in Yenagoa. Many of them are they have their own enterprises today, they have their own premises, and they're doing pretty well. And they are performing and they are participating in government activities, in public health activities, and so on and so forth. Then recently at Abeokuta, I know that there was a program on immunization, training on immunization. Though the course was a little, it was well publicized, but people were asked to come and then to be trained. Because if we think that all of these things must take place at the university, it may not be entirely so because you may not have all the time. You have to have the right resources, the right resource person to do it, and so on and so forth. So academia must sit down, the community people must sit down, the hospital people must sit down, the NHIS people must sit down. We will sit down and look at that curriculum all over again and begin to see which one is okay, which is not okay. But one thing that is important, and let us get it very clear, all those courses that are taught in university are actually what we call pharmaceutical sciences. Whether they're in the clinical area or in the pharmacy area or whatever, they are all pharmaceutical sciences. It is the conurbation, the sum totality is what is called pharmacy. Some of it will be taught at the undergraduate level, and maybe some of it you are going to see at the postgraduate level. Some of it you are going to get experientially, and that is why there is need for internship. Okay, even at the internship level, what we need to do as hospital is to begin to see how we can synergize with the public, with the community practice. We are the hospital in one location should find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 community practices where they can have exchange program with their own interns, even if it's just for 1 month rotation. That will do a lot of exposure to that student, to that candidate. But when you look at that, you'll be looking at what does the public service rule says, what does it do, how is the management of the hospital looking at it. So when we sit down and draft what we consider as the way we want to train our interns, we simply hand it over to the PCN, they will look at it. Once they stamp it, it becomes law. The same way for the students. So it is works in progress. And then, of course, because it is works in progress, we are going to continue to fine-tune until we get the desired result of what we want. And then those who are already on the outside, who are already practicing, must continuously seek to upgrade themselves. For example, like I said, at Abeokuta, there was a program on immunization, and I know that people attended. Even the ACPN national chairman, I was talking to him, he told me he was attending that program. So people must continuously make themselves relevant by ensuring that they upgrade themselves, and that is part of the pharmacy ethics. He said that you shall continuously encourage yourself to how do you call it now, professional improvement, and that is what MCPD was supposed to address. So all lifelong learning together. So yes, so that's it, and that is one of the things of the 9-star policies. Thank you very much for giving me that word. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
thank you, sir. So thank you once again for that elaborate discussions and then presentation. I think I will just have to read out some responses. Professor Eru, our own Professor Wilson Eru, he said that these community issues are now being addressed in some schools. Dr. Eziodu, thanks a lot, Dr. Dan, for a great presentation. Efforts, I wish you great success. Okay. And then, good evening. There is Awa Sadiq Adeshina. The gentleman talking about only 2 directors is quite correct. This is what is obtainable in specialist hospitals like ear centers, eye centers, VVF centers, and so on. They have refused to make changes. Dr. Joseph Madu, thanks Dr. Dan for that explanation. I think those are excellent responses from some of our listeners and our viewers. So thank you once again. I think with this, without, I think we don't have any person again. I think we have to draw the curtain down tonight for the presentation. Thank you once again for the presentation. I hope And I believe that as we go into the context, as the chairman said, we are all one. So we should have it at the back of our minds that whoever wins is pharmacist that wins. Thank you. With this, we draw the curtains. We would like to call on Dr. Ejiro. If you are still online, Dr. Ejiro Akpovo, you can unmute yourself and then lead us in closing prayers. Dr. Ejiro. It's not there. Dr. Henry Osai, can you lead us in prayers, please?
Okay, thank you. Let's pray. In Jesus' name we pray. God, thank you for this presentation. We thank you for this life. God, Father, for putting the ideas, looking for a way forward. We pray that as we synergize, as we look forward, will help us and direct us. We're also praying that all pharmacists will give information and will continue to excel. We also pray give us you also help us to excel in everything we do and plan. Thank you. We say all these things are Amen.
Amen. Amen. Good night.
Night, everyone.
Amen. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good work done today.
Good night.